Shalom. Before I start, I want to give all honors and glories and praises to Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai, Bahashim Akakodash, Yahweh, which is the one true name of the Heavenly Father, Yahweh Shai, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, but his one true name is Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, meaning coming in the name. Ba means coming in, Ha means the, Sham means name, Rakah meaning spirit, Kodash meaning holy. Peace, blessings, salutations to the hopeful elect, and shalom to you, sincere brothers that are scattered abroad, pushing forth this word in truth and sincerity. And shalom to you, sincere sisters that are listening in silence, as the scriptures command you to do so. I am the brother Mashiach Arazakah, and pretty much this lesson is going to be titled as Genesis 49. Now, Genesis 49, for those of you that are new in this truth and don't know what Genesis 49 is going into, is pretty much going into the last days prophecies given by Jacob to his 12 sons before his passing. He prophesied to his 12 sons of the prophecies of the last days, of what will happen or take place upon his sons in the last days of their lineage. Okay, so it's pretty much going into the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay, the 12 tribes of Israel, who Israel is Jacob. Jacob name was changed to Israel. So that's what Genesis 49 is about, and we're going to get into Genesis 49. It's been on my spirit. I haven't did this lesson in a while, but I'm going to get into it. Go back into going into Genesis 49. So if you're new in this truth, it's good to go into Genesis 49. Genesis 49 is really good. I advise every brother that's in this truth to go into Genesis 49. Okay, because it goes into the 12 sons of Jacob, which are the 12 tribes of the nation of Israel. So, Lord willing, this lesson is edifying. This is Genesis 49 and 1. It says, And Jacob called unto his sons and said, Gather yourselves together, that I may tell you what shall befall you in the last days. Now, that word befall, it goes into the Hebrew word bakwaya'ah, which that word bakwaya'ah, it means to encounter. Now, here it says kwara, but it's actually bakwaya'ah, which means encounter. It says to encounter, befall, meet. To meet, counter, befall. Okay, to encounter. So that's what that word befall means. And when you go into the meaning of the word last there, it goes into the Hebrew word akrayath, which means after part, end, issue, event, later time, prophetic, future time, right? Prophecy, future prophecy, okay? Genesis 49 and 1, it says, Jacob called unto his sons and said, Gather yourselves together, that I may tell you what shall befall you in the last days. Right, so we've been in the last days, okay? And we've been in the last days since the Messiah first stepped foot on the scene. And this is Hebrews 1 and verse 2 to back up what I'm saying. So we've been in the last days since the Messiah first stepped foot on the scene. This is Hebrews 1 and 2. It says, Having these last days spoken unto us by his Son, whom he have appointed heir of all things, by him also he had made the worlds. So we've been in the last days since the Messiah first stepped foot on the scene. Okay. So when the Messiah first stepped foot on the scene, that was the beginning of the last days. Okay. Verse 2. This is Genesis 49 and 2. Gather yourselves together and hear, ye sons of Jacob, and hearken unto Israel your father. Verse 3, it says, Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity, and the excellency of power. Reuben is the so-called Seminole Indians today. That's the tribe of Reuben. All right, the tribe of Reuben was the only Native American tribe that was not taken down by the U.S. troops. Okay, and that goes into the Seminole Wars, which took place in northern Florida, which we're going to go into right now. But Reuben is the only Native American tribe that wasn't taken down by the U.S. troops. The U.S. troops tried to take them down 3 times. You had the first Seminole Wars, the second Seminole Wars, and the third Seminole Wars. They tried and tried and tried, but they was just like, fuck it, we just going to leave them alone. Okay, because where the Seminoles dwelled at was a very swampy area. It was in the swamps. So you couldn't locate, they didn't be able to locate where they were. Now, the Seminole Indians, they knew the area very well. But the U.S. troops, they didn't know where they were. They didn't know the area very well because it was a swampy area. But let's get to it. It says, verse 3, it says, Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength, and the excellency of dignity, and the excellency of power. So we're going to prove that Reuben are the so-called Seminole Indians today. That's the tribe of Reuben, right? Which that war took place in northern Florida. That's where that Seminole Wars were, right? It says the first Seminole War, back when Britain controlled Florida. It says the British often incited Seminoles against American settlers who were migrated south into Seminole territory. These old conflicts combined with the safe haven Seminoles provided black slaves caused the U.S. Army to attack the tribe in the First Seminole War, 1817 to 1818. So that's how long the First Seminole War lasted, from 1817 to 1818. All right, it says which General Andrew Jackson invaded Spanish Florida, attacked several key locations, and pushed the Seminoles further south into Florida. So you see that? So that's where the Seminole War took place, right? You had the first Seminole War with General Andrew Jackson, right? And it says St. Mark's, Florida, April 1818, two Seminole chiefs or Mecos are captured by Jackson's forces, who used the ruse of flying the British flag to lure the Indians to them. So they believed in capturing two of the Seminole chiefs to be able to lead the Seminoles to their direction so they can be able to conquer. But that shit didn't work. It didn't work. It says finally, after several official and unofficial U.S. military expeditions into the territory, Spain formally ceded Florida to the United States in 1821, according to the terms of Adams-Osney's Treaty. As soon as the United States acquired Florida, it began urging the Indians there to leave their lands and relocate along with other southeastern tribes to Indian Territory. It says present day of Oklahoma. It says some Seminole leaders signed a treaty in 1832 and part of the tribe moved, but other Seminoles refused to recognize the treaty and fled into Florida Everglades. So that was the first Seminole Wars. It didn't work. They tried to take them down and lure her in, but it didn't work. The Second Seminole War. It says the Treaty of Payne's Landing, signed by a small number of Seminoles in May 1832. It says regarding Indians to give up the Florida lands within the 3 years and move west. It says when the U.S. Army arrived in 1835. So the Second Seminole War started in 1832, right? 1835, right, to 1842. That was the Second Seminole Wars. It says arrived in 1835 to enforce the treaty, and the Indians were ready for war. See, so you had the First Seminole War, which was from 1817 to 1818, I believe, right? Yep, 1817 to 1818. Then you had the Second Seminole Wars, which was from 1835 to 1842, right? It says as Major Francis Decade marched from Fort Brooke towards Fort King. It says 180 Seminole Wars led by McCompany, Alligator, and Jumper attacked. Only one man of that army disenchantment survived the ambush, right? So when they went down there again the second time to try to force the Seminole Indians for their land to give up, right? They wind up trying to call themselves going into that area, and what? They got ambushed. That's what happened to them. They got ambushed, right? And it says only one man of that army detachment survived the ambush. They called themselves trying to go in there and pull that shit, what they did with the so-called Native American Indians, right? The Northern American Indians. They tried to pull that shit. How they pulled that shit with them, they tried to pull that shit with the Seminoles, and it didn't work. They got ambushed, right? It says the campaigns of the South Seminole Wars were an outstanding demonstration of guerrilla warfare by the Seminole, the Macos, Jumper, Alligator, and Canopy, and the Ocala, leading less than 3,000 warriors, were pitted against the 4 U.S. generals and more than 30,000 troops. The Seminole War, right, 1835 to 1842, usually referred to as the Seminole War proper, was the fierce war waged by the U.S. government against the American Indians. The United States spent more than 20 million fighting the Seminoles. The war left more than 1,500 soldiers and encountered American civilians dead, and the observous discipline of the United States government tactics marred Indians' white relations throughout the country for future generations. As the hostility dragged, the frustrated U.S. forces increasingly turned to desperate measures to win the war. For example, the Osceola was captured and impoverished when he met with the U.S. troops, who had called for a truce and claimed to want to talk peace. With Osceola in prison, the United States was confounded. The war, it says, would end, but it did not. It says, although Osceola died in prison in 1838, the other Seminole leaders kept the battle going for a few more years. 1842, it says, a minimal end to the hostilities arrived, though no peace treaty was ever signed. It says, by the time most Seminoles had been moved from Florida, relocated to the Indian Territory, today's Oklahoma. See that? So you had the first Seminole Wars, the second Seminole Wars, and this is the third Seminole Wars, the third Seminole War. The third Seminole War broke out in 1855, which conflicts large overland arose between the whites and some Seminoles who remained in Florida. Constant military patrols and rewards for the capture of the Indians reduced the Seminole population by population to about 200. Then the third Seminole War ended in 1858. See, so the so-called Seminole Indians are the tribe of Reuben. So that's why when you read in verse 3, it says, Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might and the beginning of my strength, and the excellency of dignity and the excellency of power. Because Reuben was the only Native American tribe that wasn't taken down by the U.S. troops. They tried and tried. They tried with the first Seminole Wars, didn't work. They tried the second time, it didn't work. They tried a third time, and it didn't work. So when it talks about the beginning of my strength and the excellency of dignity and excellency of power, that's talking about their might. All right. Verse 4, it says, unstable as water, thou shalt not excel, because thou wentest up to my father's bed, then defilest thou it, he went up to my couch. And this is going into Reuben sleeping with his father's concubine. Okay, he committed a sin. He broke the commandment. All right, and we can prove that. We'll go to Genesis, I think it's, 30... Nah, I think it's 35 and 22. Yeah, Genesis 25 and 22. It says, and it came to pass, when Israel dwelt in the land, that Reuben went and lied with Bilhah, his father's concubine. And Israel heard it. Now the sons of Jacob were 12. So Reuben, he slept with his father's concubine, right? He broke the commandment. So Reuben is the so-called Seminole Indians today. That's the tribe of Reuben, right? And I think I got a precept. Deuteronomy 33. Yep, this is Deuteronomy 33 and 6. Let Reuben live and not die, and let not his men be few. You see that? So they were great in number. All right, so Reuben are the so-called Seminole Indians. That's the tribe of Reuben. All right. Genesis 49 in verse 4. It says, unstable as water, thou hast not excelled, because thou hast went up to my father's bed, then defilest thou it, he went up to my father's couch. And he slept with his father's concubine. Right? When you go to Genesis 35 and 22, he slept with his father's concubine, whose name was Bilhah. Right? He broke the commandment. Verse 5, it says, Shimeon and Levi are brethren. Now, Shimeon and Levi are brethren, right? Because they live on the same island, right? Which I can get out right here. Let's get that. Oops. Bear with me. So bear with me. So as you can see, going back to this, it says Simeon and Levi are brethren. Instruments of cruelty are in their habitations. So they live on the same island, right? Haiti, which are the Haitians, are the tribe of Levi. Okay, the tribe of Levi are the Haitians today, right? And the Dominicans are the tribe of Simeon. Okay, the tribe of Simeon are the Dominicans, right? And Haiti are the Haitians, which is the tribe of Levi. So they live on the same island known as Hispaniola. They literally live on the same island. But even though they live on the same island, they do not get along. Okay? They don't like each other. They don't get along. And it says, verse 5, it says Simeon and Levi. So Simeon are the so-called Dominicans today. That's the tribe of Simeon. And Levi, those are the Haitians today. Right? It says Simeon and Levi are brethren. Instruments of cruelty are in their habitations. Right. So you got the Haitians, they go down to Suriname and they pretty much cut the skulls, right? Kill the people and cut the skulls and sell them to the voodoo priests in Haiti. So the Haitians, they practice a lot of voodoo, and that's that cruelty. Verse 6, it says, "Oh, my soul, come not thou into their secret." And the secret is the voodoo that they practice out there in Haiti. The Haitians, which are the tribe of Levi, the Haitians, they practice a lot of voodoo. It says, "Unto their assembly, mine honor, be not thou united." And they're not united. Okay, they don't like each other. All right, the Dominicans, they look down on the Haitians because they're darker than them. Okay, so they have cruelty, hatred toward one another. They're not united. It says, "For in their anger they slew down a man, and in their self-will they dug down a wall." Now, when it says, "For in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they dug down a wall," that's talking about when Simeon and Levi took it upon themselves to go into the village and kill all the people. They killed all the males and took the women and the children captive due to Shechem, who was a Hamite that raped their sister Dinah. So they were in anger. Simeon and Levi, they were in great anger. So they went down into the village and they killed Shechem. They killed his father Hamor and all the males that was in that village. And when they killed all of them, right, they went and took their women and their little ones captive and took all of their wealth, etc., which that's mentioned in Genesis 34, right? Because their sister Dinah, she was raped by Shechem, who was a Hamite, right? And I'm not going to read all of this. I'm probably going to go to the main part because this is really long. So I'll read the part where their sister got raped, and then we'll scroll down to them taking the anger out and going in the village and killing everyone. All right. So this is Genesis 34:1. It says, "And Dinah, a daughter of Leah, which she bare unto Jacob." Right. This is Jacob's daughter, Dinah. Now she was raped. She was an Israelite. She was raped by a Hamite by the name of Shechem. Right. It says he went out to see the daughters of the land. Verse 2. "And when Shechem, the son of Hamor, a Hivite," that's a Hamite, all right, which is a so-called African Hamites, right? It says, "And his soul cleave unto Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the damsel. He spake." Oh, actually, I skipped verse 2. It says "And when Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, prince of the country, saw her," he saw Dinah, "and he took her and lied with her and defiled her." And that defiling was the raping. He raped Dinah. Okay. It says, "And Shechem spake unto his," it says, it's like in verse 3, it says, "And his soul cleaved unto Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the damsel," right? "And spake kindly unto the damsel." So he raped Dinah, right? Now, verse 4, it says, "And Shechem spake unto his father Hamor, saying, Get me the damsel to wife. And Jacob heard that he had defiled Dinah his daughter." So he found out that Shechem, the Hamite, raped his daughter, right? And he wanted his daughter as his wife. It says, "And Jacob heard that he had defiled Dinah his daughter. Now his sons were with his cattle in the field, and Jacob held his peace until they were come." So Jacob was furious when he found out his daughter was raped by that Hamite, right? Verse 6, it says, "And Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out unto Jacob to commune with him, right? So we're going to skip down. All right, this goes into the conversation of them circumcising themselves and etc. So Jacob informs them that they had to come into our custom for him to marry his daughter, that Shechem and his father Hamor had to come into their custom and circumcise themselves. All the males had to circumcise themselves. So due to the men circumcising themselves, they were sore for 3 days. On the third day, Shimeon and Levi took it upon themselves to go into the village and kill all the people that was in the village. And this is what I'm gonna get into right here in verse. We see that verse. Let's get down to the main point because I'm talking about it. All right. This is verse 25. So after Jacob commanded them to go get, told them that they had to come to our custom and circumcise themselves. This is it right here. It says, verse 25, and it came to pass on the third day when they were sore. So Shechem and Hamor and all of the males there circumcised themselves. They were sore on the third day, right? And it says that 2 of the sons of Jacob, Shimeon and Levi, Dinah's brethren, took each man his sword because they were upset about all the brothers found out. All the sons of Jacob found out. But the ones that were angrier the most, that was the angriest, was Shimeon and Levi. They were furious. So what they did was on the third day of them being sore, they went into the village and killed everyone, except for the women and the little ones. But they took those women and took those children, took those little ones captive and all that they had. This is prove it right here. Verse 25, and it came to pass on the third day when they were sore, the 2 of the sons of Jacob, Shimeon and Levi, Dinah's brethren, took each man his sword and came upon the city boldly and slew all the males. They killed the men. They killed those men. Verse 26, and they slew Hamor. See, they killed Hamor, who was the father of Shechem. It says, and they slew Hamor and Shechem. So they killed Hamor and they killed Shechem, his son, with the edge of the sword, and took Dinah out of Shechem's house and went out. And the sons of, it says, and the sons of Jacob came upon the slain and spoiled the city because they had defiled their sister. See, so they were upset about what Shechem did to their sister. All right. And it says, verse 28, it says they took their sheep, they took their oxen, their asses, and all that was in the city. It says, and that which was in the field. Verse 29, and all of their wealth and all of their little ones and their wives took they captive and spoiled even all that was in the house. They took everything. It says, verse 29, and all of their wealth and all of their little ones and their wives took them captive. They took those women. They took the women, the little ones, took them all captive, and spoiled even all that was in the house. Verse 30, and Jacob said unto Shimeon and Levi, ye have trouble to make me to stink among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites. Those are all Hamites. And I, being few in number, they shall gather themselves together against me and slay me, and I shall be destroyed, and it's like a destroyed. It says destroyed I and my house. Verse 31. And they said, shall he deal with our sister as with an harlot? Right. So to sum it all up, right, we go back to Genesis 49 and we read verse 6. It says, O my soul, come not thou into their secret. It says, unto the assembly mine honor, and be not united. For in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they dug down a wall. That is talking about what Shimeon and Levi did to Shechem, Hamor, and all the males that were in their village. They went in there, they killed Hamor, they killed Shechem, they killed all the males, and they took their little ones and their wives captive. They took those women. All right. So, long story short, they got the spirit of anger. Shimeon and Levi, they got the spirit of anger. You don't want to piss them off. All right. You don't want to piss off Levi, the Haitians, and the Dominicans, which is Shimeon. Those two tribes, they got the spirit of anger. You don't want to piss them off. All right. So let me finish this off. So that's what that's talking about. All right. That dig down a wall, and they slew a man. That was mention of Shimei and Levi going into the village and killing all of the males in there, right? Due to their sister being raped. So that's what that's going into. So Shimei and Levi, they have the spirit of anger. Those two tribes you don't want to piss off. The Haitians and the Dominicans, they had a spirit of anger. You never want to piss those people off. Verse 7, it says, "Cursed be their anger." You see, they got the spirit of anger. "For it was fierce in their wrath, for it is cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel." So, long story short, Shimei and Levi, their brethren, they live on the same island, but they do not get along. Okay? They don't get along. They don't get along. So, maybe when all hell breaks loose and this place is finished, we're going to come together. Right? But right now, Shimei and Levi, they don't get along. They're on the same island. They don't get along. Verse 8, it says, "Judah, thou art he whom thy brethren shall praise." And when it means that, what is this meaning? It's meaning that everyone follows Judah. Everyone mimics Judah. All the tribes follow after Judah. Judah is the top tribe. Judah is the so-called Negroes today. That's the tribe of Judah. Everyone mimics Judah. They dress like Judah, to the fashion, to the clothes. Everyone mimics and follows Judah. Judah is the top tribe. It says, Judah, thou art he whom thy brethren shall praise. It says, "Thy hand shall be in the neck of thine enemies," right? And who has them oppressed? Esau, Edom. Edom has them oppressed, right? It says, "Thy father's children shall bow down before thee," right? Because all the tribes are going to bow down before Judah, because Judah is the top tribe, right? So all the tribes are going to bow down before Judah, right? Verse 9, it says, "Judah is a lion's whelp from the prey," right? "My son, thou art gone up. He snooped down, he crouched as a lion, and as an old lion, who shall rise him up?" The Lord Yahweh Shemashai is going to rise up Judah. Right now, Judah is that old lion, right? But the Lord is going to rise him up, making him that young lion again, right? And when it talks about that prey there, that's talking about Esau, Edom. He's that prey. Because when you go to, is it 1 Kings, bear with me, I think it's 1 Kings 16, I believe it is. First Kings, 2 Kings. Let me see. I think it's 2 Kings. I think it's 1 Kings 11 and 16, 15. So like it. 2 Kings 11 and 15. It says, "For it came to pass when David was in Edom," right? So this is when David and Joab was in the land of Edom, right? And as they were in the land of Edom, they killed, and for 6 months, they killed all the males of Edom. They killed all the males of Edom, right? Let's read it. This is 1 Kings 11 and 15. "For it came to pass when David was in Edom, and Joab, the captain of hosts, was gone up to bury the slain, after he had smitten every male in Edom," right? And it says, verse 16, "For 6 months did Joab remain there with all Israel, until he had put every male in Edom," until he had cut off every male in Edom. See, for a while they were in the land of Edom for 6 months. And as they were in the land of Edom for 6 months, they slew and killed all the males of Edom. You see that? So Esau is that prey, because that's what's going to come. Esau is going to be our slaves again. Our slaves in the kingdom. But Esau is that prey. Because when the Lord makes them that young lion again, right? And once Judah rises up, Ephraim's going to rise up, and all the other tribes are going to follow after Judah, after Ephraim. You see that? So let's read it again. And it says, verse 9, it says, "Judah is a lion's whelp from the prey. My son, thou art gone up. He snooped down, he crouched as a lion, and as a old lion," right? Because right now he's that old lion, because Esau's killing Judah. Judah's getting killed left and right, right? He's that old lion, but the Lord is getting ready to rise him up, right? And it says, "Who shall rise him up?" The Lord. So when the Lord rise up Judah, then Ephraim's going to rise up, and then all the other tribes are going to follow and rise up after Judah, right? After Edom. Salakia, after Ephraim. Salakia. Ephraim. And this is the proof right here. Zechariah 9:13, it says, when I have bent Judah for me, filled the bowl with Ephraim. You see that? So when Judah rises up, Ephraim's going to rise up. And when Ephraim rises up, then all the other tribes are going to follow after Ephraim. And Ephraim is the so-called Puerto Ricans today. That's the tribe of Ephraim, right? And it says, and rise up thy sons, O Zion, against thy sons, O Greece, and made thee as the sword of a mighty man. So that's who's going to rise them up. Yahweh Bashim Ashai is going to rise up Judah. And when Judah rises up, then Ephraim's going to rise up. And then once Ephraim rises up, then all the other tribes are going to rise up as well. They're going to follow after Ephraim. Okay? So getting back to this is verse 10. It says, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet. Now, this is going into the Messiah here. When you go to verse 9 and you read all the way down to verse 12, that's mentioning the Messiah. All right? Yes, it's not Shiloh. There is a place called Shiloh. But when you read Genesis 49, Shiloh, that's not talking about a place in verse 10. Because you got these Old Testament Israelites. They use Genesis 49 and 10 to say that Shiloh that's mentioned in Genesis 49 and 10 is talking about a place. No, it's not. There is a place called Shiloh. But when you read Genesis 49 and 10, that's talking about the Messiah. That's not talking about a place. That's talking about the Messiah. We're going to prove it. Genesis 49 and 10, it says, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh comes. Shiloh is talking about the Messiah. Let's prove that. The Messiah, bro. It's not talking about a place. You got these dudes going off. All right. Let's get it. Shiloh. Now, when you look up Shiloh, it goes into H7886. It says, he whose it is, that which belongeth to him, tranquility. Right? Why would a place be called him? That wouldn't make no sense. So when you go down, it says man uncertain. When you go down to Strong's definition, it says Shiloh, right? Shiloh, right? You see it? Tranquil, Shiloh, and epithet of the Messiah. It says it right there. Messiah. So this is talking about the Messiah, bro. It's not talking about a place. So you Old Testament Israelites that's using that, you're going off. It's talking about the Messiah here. Genesis 49 and 10. It says, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh come. And unto him shall the gathering of the people be. Right, because the people are going to be gathered, which is the people is referring to the nation of Israel. They're going to be gathered under Yahushai. All right, our Lord Yahushai, he's going to be the one to do the gathering. Okay, the Lord Yahushai, he's going to be the one to do that gathering. He's going to do the gathering. Okay, the Lord Yahweh Bashimashai is going to be the one to do that gathering. Okay, when you go into this, when you read the scriptures. Okay, because the scriptures mention that all the tribes are going to be gathered under Yahushai. All right, Yahushai comes from the line of Judah. Judah is the top tribe. All right, so the Lord Yahushai is going to do that gathering. All right, so this is all talking about the Messiah here. Genesis 49:11. It says, binding his foal unto the vine and his ass's colt. Right now, an ass is a donkey and a colt is a baby donkey. This is talking about the Messiah too. Binding his foal onto the vine and his ass's colt onto the choice vine. He washed his garments in wine and his clothes in the blood of grapes. And this is talking about the Messiah. How do we know that this is talking about the Messiah? Because when you go to Zechariah 9 and you read, verse 9, Zechariah 9 and 9, this is Zechariah, prophet Zechariah that was speaking here. And he was prophesying of the Messiah. Zechariah 9 and 9, rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. It says, shout, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, thy king cometh unto thee. He talking about the Messiah. He is just and having salvation, lowly and riding upon an ass and upon a colt, the foal of an ass. This is talking about the Messiah. So Zechariah the prophet prophesied about the Messiah. This is why we say you Jakes out there that say the Messiah doesn't get mentioned into the New Testament. You're wrong. In Genesis, he's mentioned Zechariah 9 and 9, he's mentioned. Isaiah 43, he's mentioned. The Lord is mentioned all through the scriptures. He's mentioned all through the scriptures. You see? So let's get proof of what I'm saying. This is Matthew chapter 7. And we're going to go into Matthew 21. Salakia. Matthew 21. And we're going to read verse 1. And we're going to read down to verse 7. This is Matthew 21 and verse 1. And this is when the Lord commands two of his disciples to go gather him an ass and a colt, which an ass is a baby donkey. An ass is a donkey and a colt is a baby donkey. Salakia. Matthew 21 and 1. It says, and when they drew nigh unto Jerusalem and were come to Bethphage unto the Mount of Olives, then sent Yahushua two disciples. Verse 2, saying unto them, go into the village over against you, and straightway ye shall find an ass tied, and a colt with her. Loose them and bring them unto me. So this is what the Lord spoken unto his disciples, right? This is what he spoken unto his disciples, and he commanded them to do, right? Verse 3, it says, and if any man say aught unto you, ye shall say, the Lord have need of them, and straightway he will send them. Verse 4, and all of this was done that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophet, saying, this was Zechariah the prophet. That's what it's mentioning. Because you go to Zechariah 9 and 9, he said the same thing. So when it says, all of this was done that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophet, saying, that was talking about Zechariah the prophet, Zechariah. Verse 5, tell ye the daughter of Zion, behold, thy king cometh unto thee, meek and sitting upon an ass, and a colt the foal of an ass. This is talking about the Messiah. Verse 6, and the disciples went and did as Yahushua commanded them, and brought the ass and the colt, and put on them their clothes, and they set him thereon. So there you go. So when you go to Genesis 49, right? You go to Genesis 49, and we go to verse 11, binding his foal onto the vine, and his ass's colt onto the choice vine. He washed his garments in wine, and his clothes in the blood of grapes. This is talking about the Messiah. We proved that. Zechariah 9 and 9, and we went to Matthew 21, 1 through 7. Right? That's talking about the Messiah. Verse 12, his eyes shall be red with wine. And the reason why the Messiah's eyes was red with wine, because he drank a lot of wine. He drank alcohol. The Messiah was an alcoholic. When we say that, people get bugged out. They get upset. They just think that the Messiah just didn't do anything. He just drank grape juice. No, the Messiah drank wine. He drank wine. The prophets drank wine. They drank alcohol. Let's not be stupid. Right? It says it's like it. Verse 12. It says his eyes was red with wine, and his teeth white with milk. Now, the teeth white with milk is referring to the sincere milk of the word, which is, I believe, is in 1 Peter 1 and 2, 2 Peter 1 and 2. So, like, I always get confused with 1 Peter. 2 Peter. No, 1 Peter, bear with me. So, like, 2 and 2. 1 Peter 2 and 2. It says, to whom coming as unto a living 2 and 2, so I can read verse 4. 1 Peter 2 and 2, so like it. As newborn babes desire the sincere milk of the word, that ye may grow thereby. So his teeth being white with milk, that's referring to the sincere milk of the word. That's not talking about his actual teeth. Okay, his teeth white with milk. That's referring to the word, the sincere milk of the word, man. All right. So we'll stop right there, and then we'll continue the rest. I'll do a part 2 probably tomorrow, finishing up with this. Because next is going to be Zebulon, which is Zebulon. Those are the Palestinians and Guatemalans. And it's going to go into the haven of the sea, which the haven of sea, that's talking about the Panama Canal. It says the haven of ships. That's talking about the Panama Canal, all right, where producers bring their cargo through. They use the ships, the boats, with cargo, and they go through the Panama Canal to be able to get to their destination quicker, right? They go and bring their cargo through the Panama Canal. So Zebulon are the Palestinians and Guatemalans today, but we'll get into that tomorrow. So hey, I'm in it there with that. I want to give all honors and glories and praises to Yahweh, B'Hashem Yahshai, B'Hashem HaKadosh. Peace, blessings, salutations to the hopeful elect. Shalom to you, sincere brothers that are scattered abroad, pushing forth this word in truth and sincerity. And shalom to you, sincere sisters that are listening in silence, as the scriptures command you to do so. I am the brother Mashiach Razakah, and on to the next one. Shalom.